Hi, I'm JJ Conway, and I help hardworking women and a few good men build financial confidence and take ownership of their financial future. I'm cheering you on with education on financial literacy, smart investments, and passive income streams. Welcome to Ladies of Wealth.
We're not in the downtown studio because everything is iced over. So here we are tonight. I am so excited to be with you all tonight. I hope that if you are affected by this weather storm, that you and yours are safe. And if you're anything like me, the snow is still coming down out there, which is kind of rare out here where we live in rural Texas. But the snow is still coming down. I hope that if you okay, this may be a little too late for some of yous, but I hope that you have enough food stores and some flashlights and batteries and things like that. It occurred to me that we haven't put out in a long time the list of the emergency things you should have on hand, and so I think I might make a post about that soon. But I hope that you have some flashlights, batteries, maybe even some firewood, depending on where you live and things like that. And if you're projecting ice tonight, like we're snowing now, they're expecting it to ice over tonight, so they've already canceled school again for tomorrow. If you're in the same boat, I recommend you go now to the store and make sure you've got some food to eat and to feed your babies. Make sure you've got something to keep warm with. If the power goes out, make sure you go to that storage shed and drag out them blankets. If you've got a storage unit or something like that, just make sure that you're prepared. One of the things that I have found, and this is not what our lesson is about today for those of you just joining us, but one of the things that I have found is that the more prepared we are for calamities, the less they happen in our lives. And some people call it the anti-Murphy effect. I like to call it the anti-enemy effect because I really believe the enemy messes with those people that are more fun to mess with. And when you are prepared for emergencies, or you're more prepared than the next person, you make yourself less fun for the enemy to mess with. Because, we should all trust in the Lord Almighty. But many of us say we trust in the Lord and we still spin up when things like this happen. So I encourage you to be prepared. And if you're not prepared this time, and let's just prepare with some prayer that everything passes over you and you don't have any issues, and then make sure you're prepared for next time. It's just like thieves. This is also not what I'm going to be talking about today, but since it came up to my mind, where we live, sometimes you get some young folk or some older folk. And in this economy, it's happening more and more often. People will go up and down the street, basically looking whose car is unlocked. I live in a mostly rural area that's developing rapidly. And there are a lot of people who are still used to leaving their cars and their houses and all their things unlocked. And what they'll do is they'll go up one side and down the other, and they will basically try every door of every vehicle that's out to see if somebody left their vehicle unlocked. And a lot of people leave their vehicles unlocked, which makes them an easy target. So what happens is, if you've got your car locked, they don't stick around and try to break in. Now maybe in a more advanced town and a more sophisticated crime ring that might happen. But here, really, a lot of the crime, the cops tell us all the time, lock your doors. You will prevent like 90% of the theft if you lock your doors. And so we want to be prepared, and we want to make ourselves less fun for the devil to mess with. All right. All right. So today we are going to be talking about the concept of flow. And I love this lesson. Some of you have been with me for a couple years. I try to teach this lesson at least once a year in the rotation. This is part of a series of lessons that my mentors walked me through when I was trying to overcome that accident that ended my military career. And I was really feeling stuck, and I was really feeling hopeless. And I wondered if the neurologist was right, that my mind was going to be mush in 5 to 10 years. Well, 2025 will make year 8. So I guess he was wrong. But at the time, I didn't know he was wrong. And I didn't know what was going to happen or what was going to become of me, or whether I was ever going to be able to have a normal life again, y'all. I mean, I was just so down, and I was just so stuck. And I'm so thankful that these lessons came along and helped lift me up. But this lesson in particular really spoke to me. And it's because we are so focused on the lack instead of focusing on what we have. And because we feel like we don't have a whole lot, we cling to it with all of our heart. So if you know somebody today, I'm going to give you time to go out and shake the bushes and tag a few friends that need to hear this tonight. If you know somebody that feels like they're always stuck, or if you know somebody who feels like no matter how hard they work, things aren't working out for them. If you've got somebody in your life today that it feels like every door is closed to them and they can't figure out how to open the doors, this is the lesson for them to be on today, tonight, wherever you're watching this. And if you're watching the replay, whatever time you're watching this, tag a friend who needs this uplifting and encouraging lesson. Because I promise you, what we talk about today is going to help elevate your life, is going to help take things to the next level. It's going to unlock what's been held back from you for all this time. Maybe in 2024, you're like me, things just went crazy in 2024. I was so expecting 2024 to be my banner year, y'all. My first miracle baby graduated from school and high school and went off to college, and I successfully reared a young black man who didn't go to jail, and even when I was a single mother, didn't get in any trouble with the law. You know, like we have all these stereotypes that feed us and hold us back and make us feel like we're not good enough here and not good enough there. And last year should have been a celebration of overcoming so many stereotypes. But one of the things that I found out last year was when you live your life according to the measures that other people put upon you, and when you live your life according to the low expectations that others have for you, even if you're trying to bust them, when you live your life according to the falsehoods that swirl around in the media and in the local populace, when you live your life according to those shortcomings, it will stunt your growth. And as you will hear in this lesson, you will be with you will experience contraction in your life instead of growth. And so today we're going to bust free of all of that. And I hope that you will stay with me. Now, if you are a part of my Real Success Mentoring Program, then you already have this lesson in your portal. I'm going to show you the portal real quick. I should have probably set that up first. No, I'm just going to show you the guidebook. But the lesson has the guidebook. Okay. Let me get to that. The lesson has this guidebook. Okay. It's 14 pages. It's a good little guidebook that you can use to follow along the lesson. If you're not already in the class, the Real Success, REAL Success Mentoring Program, then what you can do is you can go get that for just $3. That's right. Just $3 at the link underneath my name over here. Yep, we're right there. jjclink.com/flow. Okay, you can go there and you can get the guidebook, and then it'll also come with this recording, and it'll come with the audio you can download as well as the video that you can watch. Okay, and that's just $3. It says an error occurred. Well, hopefully y'all are seeing that because it tells me an error is recorded. But the link is there beneath my name. Y'all can go get it there. Okay, so let's go ahead. And let me just make sure everything's good here. Okay, this is going to be a great lesson, y'all. The lesson is titled Flow. And the interesting thing is, so the mentors that walked me through this lesson also helped me create these lessons to bring to you, okay? And the original working title of this lesson, was actually restriction. And then it was like, well, gee, do we really want the energy of restriction? You know, it's like Mother Teresa said, I'm not going to an anti-war rally because anti and war are negative. But if you want to invite me to a rally for peace, I'll go to that rally. All right. So maybe we don't want the energy of restriction, you know, because it's not really about restriction. It's really kind of more about flow. And so it's also like another lesson that we'll have coming up on confusion. When you see the lesson on clarity, you'll know that because you hear me tell you this, it was actually originally titled confusion, you know, and when we studied and explored, it's like, well, you know what? These are the invisible boundaries that were holding us back, but we don't, how do I want to say that? You know, we don't want to dwell on the negative. And really, I hope that you'll join me for the rest of this series because there's a lot of little invisible things that are holding us back like that. And the least we can do sometimes is just to kind of hold the little small bit of truth and then kind of just, you know, ruminate on it a little bit, kind of spend some time with it. One of my first pastors, my second or third pastor, actually, my first job in the military, said he likes to marinate on it. He likes to let the ideas marinate in his brain. And we want to let ideas and we want to let truth marinate, not feelings. the truth. And not feelings, because our feelings are important. We got to honor our feelings, but our feelings are not the truth. And in fact, if we live a life by feelings, it will steer us wrong so many times. I'm not talking about not trusting your gut, but you and I both know that that gut feeling is different than the emotion feelings that so often spur us into self-protective mode. You know the feelings, like those feelings where you're so exhausted, you just can't keep your eyes open one more minute. You'll finish the rest of that project tomorrow until you get until you get an email from your coworker. It makes it look like they're taking credit for your work with the boss. Oh, you wake up real quick. You get all in your feels. You type out 3 or 4 pages. Not our feelings, the truth. And we really want to unpack the universal meaning of the truth, but especially what is that truth's meaning in my life and how can I bring it alive in my life? Okay. I think it's really, really important. Remember when everybody was talking about The Secret, like everything was law of attraction, law of attraction. And I like that. I like the law of attraction. I believe in the law of attraction, right? I believe in the law of attraction. I want a house. I want a nice house. I want a house with a lake. Am I gonna actually move it? Am I gonna attract that house to me? It's a nice idea, right? But some of us, we get wrapped around the axle in the details, and we don't understand how we actually use the law of attraction. And when we get our head around, these other aspects of consciousness that other people have experienced, we begin to realize that some of the things that we think we know were maybe handed to us with an ulterior motive. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But just for now, I want to just kind of remind you of how vast the amount of data that our brain processes. It processes like 100,000 bits of information a day, and it maybe lets up to your conscious brain 20 or 30,000 pieces of information that your conscious brain then puts together and forms conclusions and analysis, and that sometimes your subconscious brain will not let it come up to your conscious brain, but you'll develop that gut. Okay. And we see this, we think sometimes, oh, that's just woo-woo science. I don't want to, no, here we go. Think positive, think positive. I've been thinking positive and I'm still broke. Think about this happening in our lives, okay? You want to get a new car. You're driving down the road. Suddenly, everybody's got that color car you want, right? You want to get a new dog, and you're thinking of getting, I don't know, a chocolate lab. Chocolate labs are so pretty because I see blonde labs and I see black labs, but you rarely see a chocolate lab. And then you think about getting a chocolate lab. You found just the right chocolate lab, and now all of a sudden it seems like everybody walking their dog, walking a chocolate lab. And you think, well, maybe I'm attracting these cars to me now. Maybe but that doesn't make sense. And maybe I'm attracting these dogs now because I'm putting it out there. I'm manifesting. Ooh, I'm manifesting, y'all. Oh, y'all, did you do a lot of manifesting in 2024? If you did manifest what you wanted in 2024, then you understand what I'm talking about. But if you tried to manifest in 2024 and you feel like you named it, but you never got to claim it, or you thought positive, but the world thought negative, I want you to hear what I'm saying. You're not attracting the cars. You're not attracting the dogs. They're already there. What you're attracting is you're attracting them into your reality. Out of all the bits of information that your brain is processing, and it says, okay, she don't need to know this, he don't need to know that. This is not important right now. That's not going to help us achieve our goals. That's not going to help us stay alive. So those informations, they don't bubble up into our reality. They don't bubble up into our conscious mind, right? The chocolate lab was there all the time. You're surrounded by the orange cars, but your brain is shutting them out for you so you don't get so overloaded. In fact, some of us, we have the unfortunate gift of being very aware of all the details, and we get very overloaded very quick. And so your brain in the way God created it, it blocks out a lot of things that it thinks you don't need to know. And one of the ways we tell our brain we need to know about something is by consciously thinking about it, consciously spending time on it, consciously researching about it, consciously talking about it. Okay. And it's interesting because I know people. Now this hasn't happened to me yet. I can't wait for it to happen though. But I know people, y'all, who did end up getting their dream house written out exactly as they hoped, or the exact house that they put on their dream board 10 years, 20 years prior. And they did attract it into their reality, into their experience, but it was going to sit there for years before they got there. It was new to them, but it was already there. In fact, I had one story that I love, and I forget who it was, but it is somebody who's fairly famous now. And they were talking about how they bought their house in Malibu, I think it was, and when they walked in, they didn't even realize it was the same house until they were unpacking, and they had been moving and moving, and so a lot of stuff was in storage. But they had this big house, so they were unpacking all the boxes. How many of us need to unpack all the boxes? Okay, no shame, no blame. We're going to flow in 2025, y'all. We're going to stop having all these random things taking up our space and time, just carrying it around from place to place. But in any event, these people were unpacking their box, and they pull out the vision board from like 15 years ago. And one of the things they had cut out of a magazine of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous was that house. And another person that I know personally walked into their condo. They've moved up now, but they walked into their Florida condo, and they didn't even need to walk the whole house. They told the realtor, make the offer, I'm buying this now. And the realtor said, well, you haven't toured the house. And he said, oh, no. I have already seen this house. It has been on my vision right. Oh, I forget what we're calling them. Our goals, our C-type goals. It's been in my vision for the last 10 years. I have seen every detail of this house. And he walked in and he saw the kitchen and the balcony to the beach. He said, I've already walked through every room in this house in my mind. And when you think about those things, it really brings to life the idea that Emerson said, where your focus goes, your energy flows. Where your intention is, your attention flows. And what you do when you begin to think about these things, your mind is expanded to these things. You begin to see these things more, and they have more meaning. So now, for those of you who've been on the campus for a while, you might have heard how I, internalize, and really my expression of these different universal truths that I'm teaching the lessons, certainly through Think and Grow Rich, and the I Am lesson and the Oneness lessons that you'll also find that portal if you do the $3 guidebook. These things, they stand alone, but they're building on each other, because what it does is it helps us to shift our perspective. We no longer have to make our decisions according to the crumminess around us. We no longer have to live our life according to what somebody else dumped on us. We no longer have to live our life trudging through, wondering when's something going to work out for the little guy, for the little gal. It's going to work out for you. And as you begin to focus on what it is you want to work out, your brain becomes more attuned to all of the different things. The things were already there, but your subconscious didn't know you cared. And your subconscious didn't know you were interested, because all you've been telling your subconscious is, well, I'm nothing. I ain't never going to be nothing. I hate life. This is no good. My kid this, my parents that, my husband this, my wife that. That's what you've been feeding your brain. And your brain says, your subconscious says, oh, well, if that's what they want to think about, that's what they want information on, fine. Every piece of information that verifies that their kid this and their husband that and their wife this and their parents that, that's the information we're going to bubble up from the subconscious into the conscious brain. Information has been all around you that you can succeed. Information has been all around you that God is on your side. Information has been all around you that you really can make this happen. You really can thrive in 2025. The information has been there. The options have been there. The doors that need to be opened have been there. You just haven't seen them, because you've been telling your brain, all I care about right now is the feelings of failure. And all I care about right now is the feelings of disappointment. And all I want to think about right now is how horrible this is and how unfair that is. It's time to go another way. It's time to walk a way that's perhaps a little bit more excellently. All right. So tonight I want to share with you another one of these universal truths, principle, maybe an understanding based on truth, however you want to label it. All right. It's this idea of restriction in our life and the opposite of restriction being flow. Now, when you go to the dictionary and you look at the word restriction, it tells you restriction is the limitation or control of someone or something. Okay. It's the state of being limited or restriction. Let me move this over here so when I look at my stuff, I could actually be forward. Okay. Let me go ahead and read that again. Hold on. Okay. So restriction is the limitation or control of someone or something. It's the state of being limited or restricted. And so it's interesting when we hear those words, right? Limitation and restriction is a state of being. And when we're in that state of being, we're being controlled. And when one's being controlled, when we're being controlled, then one is out of control, right? And I think most of us would agree. I mean, certainly anyone who's like me, kind of type A. I mean, okay, so my son might say control freak. He's grown now and he don't need to listen to mama. I guess I'll become intelligent again in about 10 years. I mean, come on. If you were given the option to be in control or not be in control, who would choose to not be in control, right? You would choose to be in control, right? Most of us, most humans, not just humans, most animals too. There's a lot of research on animals. I'm going to get back to it, but this is important. There's a lot of research on animals where they were given electric shocks. Have y'all heard about this? They were given electric shocks in different circumstances. And when they had some degree of control over when it happened, the pain and the stress that they register was much less than when they felt like it's totally out of their control. Okay. And so, like how many people, like maybe many of you, want to leave your job because you don't like being there. You don't like being what you're told to do by the boss. Most of us don't like it. We don't like being told what to do. Some of us do like being told what to do because being told what to do is usually less stress, right? But for a lot of us, being told what to do all the time is more stressful because we feel like we have more creativity and more leadership and more to give, right? One of my mentors told a story of when he and his friends used to sell fish. They'd go get the fish, they'd come back, and they'd sell it to his friend's brother, and they'd get paid like 35 pounds or something for the day. And one day they got there late, and they had all this fish they couldn't sell. So they go back to the brother, and everybody was irritated, right? Nobody knew what to do. So the brother said, "Well, do you guys want to buy all this fish off of us? Because there's hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of fish." And he was like, "You know what? You can just have it. Instead of us paying you, you can have the fish." And so they're like, yeah. And so it's exhausted and they're running and they've exhausted for catching the fish, but now it's all their fish. So they're going around, stacking it up, putting it in the back of the car. They spent the rest of the night driving around to all the friends, went to all the pubs, all the restaurants, because now they were in control. They were exhausted, but now they were in control. It gave them new energy. They had a freezer full of fish at the end, but they loved it because they were in control. And for some of us today, you need to be more in control because then you will be able to be more energized and more motivated. Now, I'm not saying we discount the Lord, all right? Because ultimately God is in control. But I think most of us, would at some level, we would have an increased measure of anxiety or fear if we lose control. And I think one of the reasons we experience these negative emotions of anxiety and fear is because being restricted in any area of our life is not a natural state of being. Remember the definition, okay? Restriction is a state of being. It's not a natural state, okay? When we're restricted in our health, that's not a natural state of being. When there's restriction in a relationship that we're in, if you find love being restricted, if your giving is being restricted, I mean, honestly being restricted, if your transparency, your ability to be the authentic you is restricted. These are not normal states of being for humans. If you're restricted spiritually in any way, it's an unnatural state of being. If there's a restriction in the area of your finances, in the full flow and freedom of money in your life or business, that's not natural. One of the things that I do when I'm mentoring people, when they're telling me they're having a tough time, like growing their business, expanding their business, and they're looking at outside things in the market, I first want to pull them into this idea that it's not a natural state. And whatever you think may be causing it, okay, and you might have heard me talk about this at my women's retreats. How one of my formal mentors, when I sat down, I started telling him all the things that were wrong in my business. And you know what he asked me? Who remembers what he asked me? If you know what he asked me, go ahead and drop it in the chat before I can say it. But I'm like, this is wrong and this is not right and this is and blah 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 blah. And you know what he asks? Well, who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to forgive? And I'm like, what? I came here for business advice, not a prayer session. But restriction is not a natural state of being. It's not congruent with the blueprint that God created for your life. And when we experience this restriction in any area or any form, it immediately registers as a foreign object in our spirit and in our awareness. Just as if you ate something unnatural, your physical body would immediately begin the process of rejecting. That's what happens in our spirit. Our human spirit, where God's spirit dwells, will recognize this state of restriction, this unnatural state in our thinking. And what it does is it begins to make us more aware of it. Now look, I know we're going to get into a little bit of a depth tonight, but this is going to help set you free. It's going to free up the finances that have been bound in your life. It's going to open up the doors of prosperity that have been shut to you because you didn't even know that all these things played a role. Okay. Now just I'm not going to start preaching and stuff, but let me just, kind of touch on something real quick. When in my studies, we talk about simultaneously living on three planes of existence. We are spiritual. We have a human spirit that is gifted with a soul, wrapped in a soul, which makes our intellect, our personality, living in a physical body. Okay. So we're a three-part, the Bible says our body, our soul, and our spirit. When our spirit registers restriction, it immediately communicates that to our intellectual mind, and our state of thinking begins to cause us to reject that state of mind. And it does it in the form of causing us a very real pain or hurtful feelings. And we experience fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, self-judgment. And all of these negative emotions, they actually come to serve you. All of these negative emotions, they really come to serve you. They come pouring into our awareness in hopes that maybe you will move away. Maybe you will change from accepting this kind of false state of being and whatever's causing it.
Don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and ask your question at ladiesofwealth.com.